Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Palestinian People. It's December 2nd, 2013, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. This week, we are interviewing Ed Mast from Seattle Mideast Awareness Campaign, CMAC, who will update us on their transit ad campaign. Despite recent censorship and unequal treatment by King County Metro, I believe, CMAC has launched a new ad on King County Metro buses calling for Palestinian refugees to be allowed to return and live in their historic homeland with equal rights for all. Good evening to you, Ed, and welcome again to the Voice of Palestine.
Thank you. Always glad to talk to you.
Yeah. You know, it's really surprising, why the Metro, the King County Metro, see a problem with equal rights and the right of refugees to return to their homeland.
Well, so far, those 2 points are what they have allowed to be on their buses. Mm-hmm. What they have censored, the pattern apparently, is anything that directly calls attention to Israel's part in the ongoing problem. Mm-hmm. So, of course, they censored our first bus ad, Israeli war crimes, your tax dollars at work, after first accepting it and deciding that it met all of their standards. Yeah. They gave in to pressure, we think, and panicked and censored that. Yeah. Then,
can you talk a bit about that? That was in 2010, was it?
2010, yes. We wanted to launch it on December 27th, which would have been the second anniversary of Operation Cast Lead, of Israel's assault on Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they refused after they agreed, or
they accepted it. The ads were printed, were ready to go up on buses, and then there were news stories about it, and apparently some complaints. And despite their own earlier decision, they censored it.
Yeah, and you following it up in the courts, aren't you?
Yes. The American Civil Liberties Union stepped forward to represent CMAC, represent us, in a lawsuit against King County for violating our right of free speech. Yeah. And that lawsuit is still ongoing. Yeah. It was a judge, a local judge here, dismissed the lawsuit, and we have appealed that decision. We think that decision was inappropriate to the point of outrageous, and so we argued our appeal before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals here. That was in October of 2012. Mm-hmm. So we are waiting, going on 14 months for a decision from that appeals court. This is very unusual, I am told, for the appeals court to take that long to decide.
Yeah. I guess they don't want to offend the Zionists, it seems.
We can only speculate who they are worried about offending.
Yeah. Okay, so, please let us know if there is any update on that lawsuit. But, the new campaign you have started about the refugees and the equal rights. So they say it's okay to say, there is a refugee problem, but not to say who's behind it.
Well, yes, we have to speculate that that's the pattern. After being censored on our original ad, we then did several other things. But earlier this year, in 2013, we ran an ad on their buses saying equal rights for Palestinians, the way to peace. Mm-hmm. They allowed that to run, and that ran successfully in several places, buses. We just stopped running it recently, as a matter of fact, so that was running over 10 months. Yeah. Then at the same time, however, they ran another ad by the American Freedom Defense Initiative, an Islamophobic group from New York City. And that ad made an outrageous claim, took the same picture and background as our ad, and said the Palestinian Authority is calling for a Jew-free West Bank, equal rights for Jews. So King County ran that ad. Now, that's a very serious accusation against Palestinians. Not that I'm such a supporter of the Palestinian Authority as such, but nonetheless, that's a serious, and it turns out unfounded, false, misleading accusation against the Palestinian Authority. They're calling for, of course, a state with no Israeli soldiers in it, with no Israeli settlers in it who have special different rights and privileges than anybody else there. So there's no question of it being Jew-free, that outrageous phrase that's put on the ad. But so they ran a very serious criticism of Palestinians. So we then thought, well, that should certainly enable us to say some other things on their bus ads. So we submitted an ad with a picture of a Palestinian from the West Bank, and the ad said, I'm not allowed to ride on Israel's segregated I'm not allowed to drive on Israel's segregated roads. And King County Metro, the bus agency, asked us for confirmation of this. We sent them sources from the United Nations, from Amnesty International, from Human Rights Watch. This is clearly a factual claim that there are segregated roads. But then King County, to our surprise, rejected that ad. Not only said that it might upset somebody, but called it false and misleading. So that's quite outrageous.
While the ads that they ran is not false and misleading.
Yes, exactly. And we had actually demonstrated that to them as well. We didn't call for them to not run that other ad, but we did send them the documentation that the ad critical of Palestinians was making a false and misleading claim. They'd apparently asked for documentation for that one as well, and the people who ran that ad sent them some opinion articles that they apparently took as documentation. So we're quite upset at the clear unequal treatment. They clearly now have run an ad, have censored, first accepted, then censored our original ad that was critical of Israeli government policy. They've run an ad that was highly supercritical in a false way of Palestinians, and they've now rejected another ad that is critical of Israeli government policy. So the unequal treatment is quite clear.
And also, Palestinians, Christians or Muslims who are Israeli citizens can't really rent or lease or buy from the Jewish National Fund, which controls with the Israeli Land Authority almost 93% of Israel land. So, I mean,
this is one of the outrageous inequalities inside Israel, not even mentioning the occupied territories, but as you say, inside Israel, there's a non-governmental organization, which is the Jewish National Fund, which, however, is granted powers by the government and is holding this 90% of the land in Israel specifically for the use of the Jewish people.
Exclusively.
Very specific racist setup that is legalized in Israeli society.
And also, Palestinians can't live in the settlements, the West Bank, which is their land, really.
The whole point of the settlements is to be ethnic exclusive communities.
So, I mean, it's ridiculous to claim otherwise, like the other group. You said they are from...
And we try to emphasize that even with regard to Israeli settlements in the West Bank, the problem with Israeli settlements is not that Jews are living in the West Bank. We have no objection to Jews or Palestinians living anywhere. The problem is that Israeli settlers live in the West Bank under an entirely different set of laws and with a different and superior set of rights and privileges from their Palestinian neighbors right next to them. That is a sharp and clear definition of apartheid. Yeah. Two sets of laws for two different ethnic groups.
And they're doing it at the point of a gun.
Yes, at the point of a gun.
You know, while I know many Jews who live in Ramallah, you know, like
yes.
Example, you know, is people who work with the International Solidarity Movement, and
exactly.
Some of them live in Ramallah and anywhere they wish, you know, but because they choose to do so, and there is nobody is against them. Actually, they welcome more than the indigenous people there because of their fantastic work in support of the Palestinian human rights.
So there's no issue with people living there, with everybody living there, if they will live as equals.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's why we've chosen to emphasize this point of equal rights, because this is not a conflict really where we want one side to win. That's the issue. We don't want somehow a reversal where Palestinians have power over Israeli Jews. We want everybody who lives there to live there and to live there as equals. That's why we've emphasized on our current ad, which then King County Metro accepted, the first words in it are share the land. Yeah. That's what we actually mean, but it must be shared as equals.
Yeah, as equals. Yeah, and really, you know, other than that, it's like the supremacist ideology, which is what Zionism is. But it's like any other supremacist ideology that wanted Jew-free or black-free or whatever-free reservation camps and communities, basically.
Or at least to have dominance over.
Yeah,
for one people to continue to have guaranteed dominance. That's what's been unacceptable from the start about the Zionist program.
Yeah.
The insistence on ethnic, religious privilege for one people over other people, as opposed to the insistence on security and equality, and I think we support that. Even on a traditional homeland for the Jewish people, that's not a problem. It's insisting that one group has power over everybody else. That's the problem.
Yeah, and security and equality only for Jews, really. That's what the Zionists want, not for everybody. Because even including Israeli citizens so that constitute 20% of Israelis.
Yeah, it's very disturbing to notice that recently, in October, I believe, the Israeli Supreme Court decided that there's no such thing as an Israeli nationality. This came up with regard to what labels on ID cards, and so they maybe think it was a small decision, but they said, no, you can't just, if you're a citizen of Israel, you can't just put Israeli. You must put Israeli Jewish or Israeli Arab or Israeli something else. It's a very disturbing decision saying that a nation-state like Israel cannot simply have citizens who are Israeli, that the citizens must be divided by ethnic group.
Yeah, and then our politicians, whether here in Canada or in the U.S., call it democracy.
Yes.
Which is really more disturbing than, you know...
democracy for some people.
Yeah, for some people, yeah.
So after all of these rejections of our ads and this unequal treatment, nonetheless, before we found out about one of the last rejection, we had submitted our other ad, Share the Land, Palestinian Refugees Have the Right to Return, Equal Rights for Palestinians. And then, to our surprise, they accepted that, and that's running on buses now, even though we know that the issue of the right of Palestinian refugees to return is is a hot-button issue. Maybe they don't know that at King County Metro, but the only pattern we can see is, as it happens, the current ad does not mention the State of Israel.
Yeah.
So maybe they think there's no criticism of Israel in it whatsoever. Yeah. We do actually think that the words on this current ad are very difficult to argue with.
Yeah.
Who wants to argue with sharing the land?
Yeah.
Does somebody want to argue that Palestinian refugees do not have the right to return? Does somebody want to argue with equal rights? So we actually think we're saying something quite strong, but that is unimpeachable in this current ad.
Yeah. Actually, if you could give us a website, because I've seen some of these pictures, they are quite powerful, these ads. You have them on...
Yes, you can see this ad on our website, our CMAC website, so www.seamac.org. That's SEAMAC.
Yeah.
For Seattle Mideast Awareness Campaign. So CMAC.org. We have the photos there.
Yeah.
We can, frankly, always use help because it costs money to run these ads. So if you go on our website, we have a donate spot, an online donation spot, and the more money we have, the more we can spread these messages. We're a volunteer organization, so we don't have administrative costs other than lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And but if we raise more, we can run ads on more buses, or we can run print ad versions of them, or Google ad versions of them, or spread this message to more people, because we decided that there are many people who don't even realize that there are Palestinian refugees, and that sharing the land is our goal. So we think none of these words are wasted in reaching out to our communities and our neighbors who may not know anything about this conflict and this situation.
Yeah. In comparison, here in Vancouver, they ran ads for disappearing Palestine with the 4 maps, and really they accepted them because there was a precedent in front of the Supreme Court with other groups that they ruled that freedom of speech should be upheld. So, they couldn't really deny the ads. Although in Toronto they did, which is again, it's mind-boggling, because these maps are factual and historic, and nobody can argue with them except the Zionists, I guess. But
all over the United States this is happening, and some cities like New York or Washington D.C., I guess, are being forced to run everything. The same American Freedom Defense Initiative ran some overtly, clearly anti-Muslim ads, and they were first turned down, but then they also mounted a lawsuit, and now they must run anything in New York. So Seattle is actually King County Metro is sticking its neck out in making these decisions, and so we're considering other actions to complain about that, but we're waiting for the appeal from the last case to see what we should do.
Yeah, and are you asking for damages? Because that's a good way to finance your ads.
Part of what we, during the trial, were asking were some damages. There are apparently legal reasons for that. Mainly, we're asking that they run the ad. We don't. Our plan is not particularly to be punitive in the lawsuit. The lawsuit is asking for justice, asking that our message be allowed to go out as it should have in the first place. And it would have been much less trouble to everybody in King County if they had simply let our ad run in 2010. They've wasted a lot of public funds with their panic decision to censor us back then.
I encourage our listeners to go to the website, because really it's very effective ads that you have there, and hopefully other cities will take note and use even some of them. I'm sure it's not copyright.
No, we absolutely encourage everybody to steal from us, please, and use these materials. We've done a whole series of print ads in local weekly newspapers as well. So if people will go on www.seamac.org and look at our past ads, you can see a wide variety of ads on a wide variety of topics, because our weekly newspapers have not turned us down, and we've been able to address a wide variety of topics on the issue.
Just a couple of days ago, on the 29th of November, most of Solidarity movement commemorated the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. the significance of that date, as well is the Partition Plan that was mainly supported by the West, including the U.S. and Canada, and the refugee...
The United Nations plan from 1947.
47, yeah, the Partition Plan in November 29th, actually, 1947, where, they partitioned Palestine without asking the people in Palestine what they want, and they forced it down their throats due to pressures by the U.S. government on 3 countries actually that forced them to change their vote. The Partition Plan, I believe it's the Philippines and Haiti and Liberia. And that was due to economic and diplomatic pressure on these countries to change their vote. So really, the U.S. and Canada, which played a major role in formulating and passing the Partition Plan, also carry responsibility for this plan, and accordingly they carry responsibility for the refugee problem, so-called problem, because they created it by passing such a resolution at the United Nations.
Yeah, one of the things that I hope folks will remember is that in the standard history that I was taught when I was growing up in the United States, there was UN suggested a partition plan, and then Israel declared itself a nation, and then 3 Arab countries declared war on it, and it defended itself and won. Mm-hmm. What actually happened was in November 1947, the UN suggested this partition plan. They later were ready to change their minds because it clearly wasn't going to work. But fighting broke out instantly as the Zionist and later Israeli forces were trying to not only defend the land in the partition plan, but take control of land that was not promised to them in that partition plan. And over the next 6 months, before Israel created itself as a state, several 100,000 Palestinians were already driven out. In fact, the famous infamous massacre of Palestinians at the village of Deir Yassin happened on April 9th. And then later on May 15th, Israel declared itself a nation. And finally, after hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been driven out as refugees, finally Jordan and Syria and Egypt entered the fighting, in part as a response to this huge wave of Palestinian refugees being driven out. So the standard history should include that the State of Israel had expansionist intentions from the very start. And has ultimately drove out somewhere between 700,000 and 800,000 Palestinians, and drove out several 100,000 more in 1967. And it wasn't just that they drove them out. They refused to let them come back in. All over the world there are conflicts and people run away to protect themselves, as I would. But then usually they're able to go back. But Israel put laws in place immediately to prevent Palestinians from returning, to confiscate their land, to keep them ethnically cleansed, to protect that that artificial Jewish majority in this new state of Israel. And so we have now several million Palestinian refugees and their families who are not allowed to return, many of whom were born inside Israel, not allowed to return.
No, it's worthwhile to remember what happened, and like you said, the refugee problem started even before the declaration of the state, and we'd like to emphasize really that it happened under the British mandate watchful eye. They were there to protect the population. At the same time, they allowed this catastrophe to happen, and as you said, almost half of the refugees happened before the establishment of the State of Israel. And also the history is vague on the intentions of the Arab armies that entered Palestine, so-called, to defend the Palestinians, because we learn now that there were deals with King Abdullah to take the West Bank rather than to defend Palestine, So it's murky that the Arab intention then was to fight Israel, because if they wanted to, the results would have been much different.
Yes, my understanding is that there was only one sort of trained Arab army, and that was the Jordanian army, and they made a treaty in advance that they would only proceed up to a certain point in their battle, and that was about halfway through Jerusalem there. So there were all kinds of unfortunate deals, and I don't think the Arab governments have played a very good role in this ongoing crisis.
No, till now, actually.
Including now, yes.
Yeah, including now, where they meet with Israel objective for many things in the Middle East. That includes Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states, and even Egypt. You know, they are now part of the blockade against Gaza. So
and I'm afraid I have to include the Palestinian Authority in the Arab governments that are not playing a positive role in this situation.
Sure. Actually, we interviewed Israel Shahak on the Voice of Palestine in '93, 2 months after, and I asked him about
after the Oslo Accord.
About the Oslo Accord, just 2 months after the Oslo Accord. I didn't interview him on the Oslo. I really interviewed him because he had a book about Israel military sales to third world countries. But at the end, I asked him, "What do you think of the Oslo Accord?" And he said it right flat out that the Israel wants the PLO to become the new village league. And he was right, that's what happened. These village league were traitors who Israel gave them guns from the Mukhtars in Palestine after '67 to keep the peace for them. And that's what happened. He was visionary. And again, like you said, the Palestinian Authority is complicit, and they have security coordination with Israel, and they are trained by the CIA and the Canadian Intelligence Service here, because I don't know if you're aware that Dayton has more Canadians under his command than Americans. He had 18.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had 18 Canadians, while 6 Americans only under his command, in addition to some British officers. But, it's clear their role. So, it's disastrous. But, the United Nations, I'm not sure if you followed up, they passed 6 resolutions, and one of them declaring 2014 International Year of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Do you know about it? And
I don't know the background of it, and I was a little surprised because it looked to me as though the Palestinian Authority had once again given up rights that it had no right to give up, so that it could enter these useless, doomed from the start peace negotiations. And I thought one of those was any action at the UN. But now we not only have a resolution calling 2014 the Year of the Palestinian, but it seemed as if Palestine is participating in the UN Assembly in ways that are surprising me. So I unfortunately haven't kept up well with the ins and outs of the UN.
Yeah, although, I look at it as a victory for the Palestinian people rather than for these collaborators,
Yes.
because, they are collaborators. And, I don't know if you heard, when they wanted to accept the Palestine as a semi-state at the United Nations, and Canada threatened them with cutting aid to them, although most of the aid, the Canadian aid, goes for the...
To enter a new destination number, press 1. To redial...
It seems we were cut off, but what I was saying really is that when the membership to the United Nations came up and Canada threatened to stop the aid to the Palestinian Authority, and as I said, most of it was to go for training of the security forces. There was a document that was exposed here in Canada where they said in the document that Israel asked the Canadian government not to stop aid to the Palestinians because they are helping in keeping the people under control, because Israel is worried about the third intifada. And this came out really actually in a secret document here in Canada. So it's clearly the role of the authority. So as I said, what happened at the UN is not really because the Palestinian Authority is working for it, or the Arab governments are working to pass such a resolution because of the pressure of the people and in all over the world, not just in the Arab world, and because they believe in the justice of the Palestinian cause mainly.
I think this also applies to the Palestinian Authority versus the Palestinian people themselves on the ground. The couple of times lately, Palestinian Authority has gone over some kind of an edge. In the most recent assault on Gaza in 2012, when the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank was out beating Palestinians to prevent them from publicly protesting against Israel's bombing of Gaza. It's very hard for me to see how anyone could take the Palestinian Authority as the representatives of the Palestinian people after that. But the next thing in these recent negotiations, Mahmoud Abbas and others have essentially said that they are willing to sign away the right of Palestinian refugees to return. And they don't in any way represent those refugees. Who are they speaking for? What right do they have to do that? But at the same time, the Palestinian people are taking steps forward, most particularly, it seems to me, young people. There's a whole new generation of Palestinian activists, both inside Israel and in the West Bank and Gaza and outside. And we saw that a couple of years ago with that effort in Syria, to simply walk back across the border and climb over the fence and refugee return. A large-scale, non-violent, direct action that was very moving and inspiring. And now we have, again, young people. I think it's because maybe the young people are not so attached to the traditional leadership, but young people, for example, at the Palestinian village of Ikrit in northern Israel, one of the villages that was depopulated in 1948 and then destroyed in 1951, and young people are going back. Young people whose families were from Ikrit, but are not allowed to go back and build, are going back, putting up tents, refurbishing the church, and living there and planting gardens and saying, we're here now, and also in other places, the village of Kufr Berim and so forth. So this was one reason that we chose to put a bus ad up to emphasize the right of Palestinian refugees to return, because Palestinians are stepping forward and saying, we and our families will not be forgotten, and we're going to take direct action, nonviolent steps to make the right of refugee return a reality.
Yeah, it's worth noting that Ikrit and Kufr Berim, the two towns, are all Christians really, from the Maronite sect, but again they treated them the same way. And I agree with you, there is hope with the young generation, because I don't know if you heard about it, but today they disrupted the meeting for Sa'ib Ariqat in Jenin, which was really,
good. I didn't hear about that.
Which says quite a bit about these young people who are not afraid of nothing, and they're not going to succumb to...
There's always been this thread in Palestinian society. The first Intifada really was not just a revolt against Israel, but it was a revolt against what was then the traditional leadership in exile.
That's true.
That was becoming less and less responsive. The PLO in exile was becoming less and less responsive to the needs of the Palestinian people. So there's always been, this is what so many people don't understand, there's always been grassroots organizing and grassroots political action being taken by Palestinians, and my own personal experience of being there and knowing people and talking to people is that the Palestinian people are so ready to organize themselves, are so ready for self-determination and self-government, because they have been forced to be political, and because they're so highly educated, and they've been demonstrating it time and time again, only to be brutally battered and repressed, first by the Israeli government and then by the Israeli government subcontractors, the Palestinian Authority now. But they keep rising up and really are inspiring.
Yeah, the Village League, as Israel about them. So you were in Palestine. You participated with the ISM, I believe, International Solidarity Movement. Could you tell us about the importance of volunteering coming and going to bear eyewitness on what's happening in Palestine. I know Gaza is really difficult now to get in, although some people are getting in. But do you have a word for our listeners and our supporters about the benefit of going there and seeing for themselves?
Absolutely. Both the United States and Canada, our governments are so complicit in the actions of Israel that we have a responsibility first to educate ourselves, which can happen from research and so forth. But it's hugely valuable to go over and see for ourselves. There are a variety of ways to go over and witness through global exchange, through Friends of Sabeel, church groups are going over, Amnesty, all kinds of groups are going over. Plus there are Palestinian groups, Siraj, and other groups, and there are Israeli Jewish groups like the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions that will give you a tour, alternative tourism they call it, to say, come with us, be safe, and we'll walk around and show you what it's really like for Palestinians here. So witnessing is a very valuable thing to do because it will, chances are, launch you into action, even if that action is talking to your friends and neighbors and educating them about what the real situation is there. The International Solidarity Movement is a movement of Palestinians who have invited internationals to come stand with them in nonviolent resistance, because if Palestinians resist nonviolently the Israeli military, they can get shot. But sometimes, if white people are with them, if Europeans or people from the United States or Canada are with them, sometimes the Israeli military will hesitate to shoot, hesitate to use the same level of violence. So it's an opportunity literally to stand and link arms with Palestinians who are attempting to organize mass nonviolent resistance. So if you look up palsolidarity.org, the International Solidarity Movement is a very valuable contribution to the ongoing Palestinian resistance. And again, more and more people more and more Palestinians are organizing all sorts of ongoing nonviolent resistance. Not that nonviolence is the only thing to do, but it's a very valuable and important thing to do. The ongoing demonstrations at the village of Belin against the encroachments of the wall there, and various other villages doing things. So it's very possible and very important to go and participate.
And if people can't go, I guess it's important to do other things, like you said, educate themselves. And what do you think of the BDS movement?
The BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, is playing an increasing role, just as it did slowly at first and then increasingly to end apartheid in South Africa. There are more and more victories, more and more university student councils are voting to approve resolutions to divest university funds from investing in Israeli companies and from U.S. companies that profit from Israel's occupation. More and more companies are feeling the sting, particularly in Europe. Veolia is a company that has felt the sting as some investment agencies have pulled money away from them. So the boycott and divestment and sanctions is, again, another nonviolent technique and a way that we can all participate anywhere, just by not buying a SodaStream soda maker because it's an Israeli company that locates its factory illegally in the occupied Palestinian West Bank, not buy Ahava Cosmetics, similarly located illegally in the occupied Palestinian West Bank. We can make individual choices. We can organize to boycott Israel as South Africa was boycotted, and they are feeling the sting. And we know this because some people are saying, oh, well, it won't make any difference. The state of Israel is spending millions of dollars launching campaigns to counter the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, and to spread misinformation in an attempt to counter it. So we know that they're feeling it, and it's a way we all can participate. And I noticed that the Israeli writer Gideon Levy just said today that the recent agreement, or the ongoing agreement that they're trying to make with Iran, demonstrates that sanctions on a country can work, can make that country change its behavior and change its policies. And so he was saying this is another reason. This is an Israeli Jewish writer saying we need to boycott, divest, and sanction the State of Israel to make the State of Israel change its policies of racism and ethnic privilege against Palestinians. And once again, we have examples that it will work.
Actually, it's heartening to know also tomorrow the group inside the United Church, which is one of the main churches in Canada, is launching a campaign against unsettling products, and they're going to basically these products are made in Israeli settlements, and they're going to picket tomorrow London Drugs here in Vancouver for carrying soda stream, which is really it's going mainstream, this campaign. And again, I think the role of Kairos Palestine, which is a religious Christian coalition, called clearly for not just against the settlements but also for all Israeli products. So it's having an influence and effect. But I want to go back to your campaign about you're not really counting on Metro to change their mind, so you are doing other things. Could you tell us a bit about the alternatives? I've seen one with a human bus going around with a sign. Could you tell us a bit about it and about the videos you are doing, which are, I saw some of them, they're really effective. Could you tell us a bit about that?
When our bus was censored, when our bus ad was censored back in 2010, I got together with some other theater people, and they decided that we should try to see if we could reach people in a different way, and we were all upset. And so we actually took one of the physical bus ads that had been censored, a long banner, and attached it to poles and created a bus around it, a two-dimensional bus. And we all put on clown noses and walked around in downtown Seattle with a big sign on our bus ad saying, "Censored by King County," and we had a censor with a clown nose running around saying, don't look, this has been censored. So we made a video of that. If you look up, I think if you Google Seattle's free speech bus, you can get to that videotape. I'm more and more interested in some of the satire approaches, and I know that we recently did another video called "Mud is a Gray Area." If you look that up on YouTube, and that is taking the transcript of some conversations that some activists had with Nordstrom department stores, asking them to stop carrying Ahava cosmetics, which are an Israeli product that illegally uses mud from the Dead Sea and is based in an illegal Israeli settlement. And so we take the transcript of this conversation, where, of course, Nordstrom tries to say that they are ethical and paying close attention, but in fact just keep saying, no, we're going to keep selling this, no, we're going to keep selling this, and we have some fun with that. So folks, look up "Mud is a Gray Area" on YouTube. You can see that one as well.
We know their ethics is the dollar, really. Most of these companies,
unfortunately,
their ethics is the dollar. But, do you have a link on the website, CMAC.org, for these videos, or?
I'm not sure we do have a link to those, and we should. And we should. But, so that's why they're both on YouTube, so I think if people look up by their title, they should be able to see it there.
It's usually easy on YouTube to
and we also, if on YouTube you will look up the world's shortest flash mob. We made a short video of one of our very simple actions to do a flash mob inside Bed Bath & Beyond and Nordstrom's about various Israeli products we'd like them to stop using. And this one doesn't require learning a dance or doing anything. It's a very simple repeat after me and a short, simple song that anybody can learn in a minute, and you don't even have to rehearse it. So if anybody wants a simple group action that lasts a very short time and no one will ever get arrested doing this, then look up the world's shortest flash mob on YouTube.
No, these are really very creative thing, and I think you're doing great there, and please keep up the good work, Ed, and hopefully we'll talk to you again. Unless you have a last word to our listeners?
I think we've covered so much. There's always more to say, but it's always a pleasure to come and chat about current events.
Yeah, okay, that's great, Ed, and thank you again. And, it was really pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Hannah Kawas talking with Ed Mast from the Seattle Mideast Awareness Campaign. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and our final piece of music is Unsettling Goods by Tony Quarrington. This is part of the kickoff of the Canada-wide campaign starting tomorrow, December 3rd, by the United Network for Justice and Peace in Palestine and Israel, all geared towards boycotting SodaStream, Keter, and Ahava products made in illegal Israeli settlements. Here is Unsettling Goods by Tony Quarrington.
This soda machine was made in a factory which stands in a homeland where olive groves grew, made in a place where homes were plowed under, that now is a settlement thriving and new, built on a site from which people were scattered, driven away from their history and place, whose traces have vanished, whose name is deleted, whose story is written in each suffering face. Unsettling goods that are not good for all, made in the shadow of checkpoint and wall, built with guns and with prisons, bulldozers and fists. Justice means crossing these goods off your list. And these fragrant bath salts come from the West Bank, come from the Dead Sea, where hopes can die too, where water's withheld and healthcare restricted, where poor people toil for a shekel or two. This is a land that is no longer holy, scarred by oppression and brutality, where homes are demolished and lives are unequal, mocking the pretense of democracy. Unsettling goods that are not good for all, made in the shadow of checkpoint and wall, built with guns and with prisons, bulldozers and fists. Justice means crossing these goods off your list. This plastic toolbox comes from a region where a people is daily losing its lands. Patient and steadfast, they dream about justice and look on with sorrow as empire expands. Curfews and roadblocks, barbed wire, hand grenades, Uzis and tear gas to keep them in line. No room for dignity in solidarity. We've got to show the whole world a sign. Unsettling goods that are not good for all, built in the shadow must boycott these lands and work for a just peace in Palestine, and work for a just peace